Good day. For all those who are listening, I read what the will of that who is Almighty wishes to introduce to the world. This letter comes from an illiterate, a mean aware of how much mercy in who is humble the love of God can manifest, and it reveals in perfect faithfulness what it has received from the one who lives in a hidden but present dimension. Humanity considers real only what can be touched, but that's not always the case, as when it is about believing in an invisible reality, you need to see what you don't see. Science learns much to understand what's not within reach, and that's the reason why learning means looking into the unknown. Science sticks with what can be explained or scanned, but there are pearls of infinite worth, accessible and available and revealed for the sake of humanity. And they can tell well-intentioned unbelievers a message going beyond human thinking and saying, Jesus Christ, the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end, the infinite love, humbles himself out of infinite mercy to expose your pitiful state and show you the path that's always the same as 20 centuries ago, to recognize true love through the denying of yourselves, and thereby he declares the way open. The last time for the modern humankind in the plague of the pandemic. Everyone is looking at what's happening, and the many opinions look for an answer, an explanation, and a solution capable of solving the world's danger that, without making any noise, has placed in crisis the whole of humankind, and no one can see the root of this evil, of the first outbreak claiming victims in humanity's powerlessness, conquering in a short time the mastery of an alleged power ascribed to the human being's power. And there's none so deaf as they who will not hear, and there's none so blind as they who will not see, because who is responsible for an action not being aware has extenuating circumstances, but who lives willing to remain unaware is guilty of inanity. Today the world, as it was in the past, is looking for a solution, a remedy, looking for it in the scientific field and in its own intellectual skills of discoveries, especially to defeat what threatens humanity, the darkness of death. Many theories, many answers, but no win. As a matter of fact, it gets harder and harder to understand why, with all the effort of all the minds of all people, it's not possible to gain a secure place of safety and an airtight place of stability. Every day thousands of people die, and nobody wonders about the reason of this pandemic, and nobody does anything to take an inner look in themselves, to find in their behavior the reason hidden in their own heart and in the depth of the soul, because usually human beings tend to always blame the others, and that's the reason of this pandemic, being arbitrary judge according to subjective truth. There are no remedies that can take away the evil of humankind, because above all this, there's the freedom of each individual who performs, in the full power of their faculties, a precise action, determining an activity with all the related consequences, most of the times not found from a rational point of view, that perform a real result for better and for worse, accumulating a huge consequent trousseau without the people themselves knowing it, which sooner or later is revealed. These few lines should be enough as a warning to all humanity, because, like in Noah's time, the wickedness of people rejects a sincere examination and a living recognition of their mistakes. And that's why I convey through an ordinary person a last warning to change. Thereafter, your long industrious series of great authoritative masters and teachers will pass through an account of extremely unyielding law, and nothing will escape from a sword of justice. My love and my mercy have always stopped the result of the deep wounds created by people with their actions. But today, after infinite reproaches and unceasing indifference, humankind proclaim their awareness in an exclusive autonomy, and they declare they don't need anyone, showing their right with pride, without the slightest opening toward the only source of invisible truth revealed in the gospel of Jesus Christ, who, in a completely spiritual reality, has declared his kingdom of love and his dwelling place to be the living, immaculate treasure for the human being only heir. But the human being must believe in a completely spiritual dimension. The hard virus is the result of extremely arrogant fusions of thinking energies radiated by the human being, a strong lethal poison coming to life due to the willing of any human being, creating a kind of devil that lives off the invisible energy through a state of wickedness and hatred generated by every person's free will materializing. The real, even though invisible, interpenetrations of each feeling from great concentrations of spiritual elements made of the radiated feelings very same substance, and the captivating reactions in the spiritual but also physical atmosphere leave a more or less influential range of action according to the potential of the soul, trapping, trampling, suffocating the entire planet. The theory school shows about the human being lavished by an origin from mud is not correct, given that spirit has no matter, and mud comes from human beings themselves when they prevaricated by carrying out a power not granted. The many cornerstones and the many mysteries you've answered to with your science and your interpretations have diverted from the true essence of the human being, leading to superficial conclusions solely based on a global ethics of an earthly life, an earthly body, an earthly world, leaving out the true core of the real human being, and your research is only based on this range, splitting up and dealing only with the most transitory part, and that is what brought you to today's world. An unexpected letter of reprimand for all humanity. A great capability of the people today, in this time of technology, where the smallest meaningless person can talk to the whole world, and where the whole world can listen to the slightest whisper just staying at home. It's this the very day in which God talks to you in the complete freedom of your heart, without any exceptions, to show you things you've never understood. You can't recognize your evils, and that's why I'm writing you these things, if you're willing to listen, to help you see what you've never seen. A blind person is deprived of a sight which makes him incapable of judging anything, and if there's no one who talks to them about it, they can't have a thought about it, as everything is perceived through a person's thought, but in the form of an image. And the confirmation is when you show a picture to 1,000 people, each and every one of them sees in 1,000 personal, biased truths, based on an infinite number of factors. But no one breaks free from their own world to see with the border-free eyes of a heart that solely can, if it's free, see reality. What I'm telling you, if heard with your head, like the aforementioned picture, will only annoy you and you'll criticize as you're so good at it. And like all the things you approach, it'll pass without leaving the least worth, and you'll forget the very words, so as to not leave any trace, and they will remain in the air as unforgettable sentence sealed for each and every soul. A void will incur in the mind of the human being if they don't open up the heart to invisible horizon, and if they don't subject themselves to their own choice, arbitrarily uttered. And when this happens, the human being has made their choice. Pay attention, because God softly passes by, without making any noise, and only the humble heart can feel him. Don't ever let the ideas and the images you've been having on me for millennia rule, because they prevent you from looking with a free eye. But watch out for the intimate breath revealing God's action. Don't assign a feeling to the emotional sphere, because it's a deceit. But most of all, don't let anyone fool you, since many will pose as teachers and prophetess, praising the alleged authority and by right. And there's no one who has the right to impose their own view. Like all the masters of the world and all the clerics have always done, teaching some kind of document which has the power, if complied, to dismiss the mystical shape of a being called in 1,000 shapes, but that's only equivalent in the essence to the human being's creation, and there's no greater danger than this, teaching a one-size-fits-all recipe. The passage you make on this earth is so short that you should understand its inanity, and despite everything, all you can see is living in this dimension, hoping in a happiness viewed from an idealistic, familiar, in an earthly good standpoint. And this is enough for you to get an apparently everlasting joy and an unchanging desire that wins heaven only in the faith in an instinct embodied in one of the many skins of the human being. A body that dies so weak in its nature, entirely subjected to your author's maneuver, and in addiction that you believe perfect, it falls apart before the simple action of time. I am surprised that you may believe in such nonsense, you who are experts of all creation, with every kind of frivolous explanation. Why can't you see your complete, illegitimate expert's arrogance? It's time now to lower yourselves from your arrogant throne, if you really want to access the real happiness. The world made of stone can't last for long, and it'll take very little to vanish into thin air, and true life can't be compared to your planet. But if you don't believe, nature itself will show you its destiny. We live in a time in which the human being has met a shallow good helped by their own gain. And that's the reason why Earth gets tired of infinite streams intersecting one another, and they cater a constant sickness for all people. And today we need to explain an evil that coordinates people's minds enveloping nature in a contingent asphyxiation exceedingly perpetrated in the condition related to the geophysical activity. Streams that, if more enhanced, bring to the destruction of enormous masses of physical life. You people must understand that what you think is energy that seems obvious to you, but actually, every thought you think, especially angrily, produces a kind of soul fuel, causing the outburst of actual epidemic in germs, cells, atoms, intersecting matter itself with continued effluxes, sometimes destructive. And you don't even realize that you reap what you've sown. Now, if the sower doesn't change the seed, how can they expect to reap lilies if they've seeded thorns? You have a potential within both individual and groups as rich, and it's the origin of all your problems. How do you think you can solve coronavirus issue and many more that'll come along, only carrying out a process that doesn't remove the root, which is completely spiritual? You have a huge flaw. You think you're competent and master of things that you don't even know, and you want to fix the issues just stopping up holes. Matter is not only physicality, but also what you project with utmost ease outside of you through hatred, judgment, slanders, criticism, arguments, selling yourselves, your neighbor, nature, and what you don't know, the true being inside of you, invisible to your eyes. You are not aware of your true state because you were accustomed and educated to think only seeing through physical eyes. But tell me, the hostility you have with one another, do you know it's the cause of every illness you have on your earth? The widespread feeling on every field of self-centered longing, developing rivalry, dispute, controversy, possessiveness, opposition, condemnation, and so on. Have you ever thought that these can harm as much as a war made with nuclear particles or crimes of deadly chemical weapon thriving for the greed of power only? How can you talk about peace if you are in war first with yourself and then, as a reflex, with everyone else? What good is all your perpetual solidarity when you refuse in yourselves what I incessantly try to indicate you, to make you aware of the disputes you have in you? Your pilgrimage does an object a life surrounded by intellectual extreme speculation that always considers superior to a least bit of common sense, disagreements on an arrogant level, propagandists for theory that would make the least of simple people laugh, and yet you keep on uttering irradiations akin to the known leprosy of the century, which spreads in everyone. Irradiations involving emotional, rational, sentimental sphere, and the whole being you are oblivious of, which stores and passes down to senses, to mind, to desire, to thinking, to your heart. Maybe you don't believe God may talk to you with these words, and you can't even imagine the love with which I do it, but I believe in the heart which I bestowed to the real human being who's not matter, and I personally work in each and every one of you if you want me. I am here to tell you to recognize your hidden erring in what you're thinking and believing, and when faith arises in you, I'll be able to take you to those green pastures, to come out of that labyrinth you created in yourselves. And I am ready to offer to all those who will love me with truth and with true commitment my grace. Remember the joy of her who obeyed in complete humility her Son, and who now reveals her essence of mother. You people never drop off the merciless element you've been using for millennia as only absolute way to win whatever intrudes to the investigating and scrutinizing capability, using intuitive skills to find answers to any problem. And you always discover new and enticing things, and you make tomorrow's hope out of them. But ask yourselves, how come you eliminate the great sphere that can give you a completely different understanding in a delicate connection of coherence of life and true faith, where everything can be revealed? If you don't believe in a superior, shapeless, imperishable, almighty, omnipresent, omniscient being, do you possibly believe in these few years you spend on earth that the tangle of the millenarian plague may be solved by your abundant intelligence, besmirched to the core in the dirty, unrepentant conceit and in the most complete arrogance of a mind and a thinking corrupted in an evil and overbearing selfishness at this point, buried in the turns of a strictly magical management of a latent, twisted power? How come your pilgrimage is always so hellish? How can't you can't always consider all this and all the past as an ordeal I wanted, or as a punishment I delivered, or as you often say, what have I done wrong? How can there be a God when there's atrocity, cruelty, hatred, injustice, hunger, war, plague, famine, oppression, abuse, murder, torture, countless illnesses, and what haunts you most of all, death? You manage anything and you blame me. You turn everything upside down, creating a complete chaos, and you expect me to be your servant, to tidy everything up. You violate freedom with your eagerness for always being right, and you demand to live a timeless life. You put authority and power above all, declaring humanity ruler of the earth, determining an order for each thing, a law on all human beings, far as driving the birth of peoples, coming up with political sciences. Yet, when something goes wrong, I should be the cause? The message to the world's responsible leading figures. It's surely not an insignificant illiterate, the one who can be heard before all the world's authorities to determine which may be the solution and the remedies to be carried out to help humanity to find the needed wisdom to build a mass equilibrium again. And it's not easy to conceive a solution putting everyone at ease if an individual and social commitment to recognize their own faults with substantial wisdom is not in everyone. That would be enough. It would be enough to believe in the only path of salvation, which has its own foundation in consistently bearing witness to a life with the awareness we are on a testing ground to learn how to live giving oneself, giving up the never easy to see selfishness, and with a bit of faith, believing in a homeland purely spiritual, and then everything would be easier. Regrettably, people are savage. Even though it may not seem like it, they must be educated to freedom, a freedom they don't know, a freedom that can only be achieved only in relation to a clear vision of all things. L'uomo, a person, is not free if they indulge their instincts. A person is not free if they inculcate ideologies in themselves and in others. A person is not free when they invade the development of a human being. A person is not free if they rely on their attractions and repulsions. A person is not free if they consider themselves with pride. A person is not free if they suppress a person's thinking, culture, religion, ideals. A person is not free if they want to be right. A person is not free if they judge, malign, condemn with feelings of envy, hatred, resentment, hubris, supremacy, boldness, malice, and that which you don't recognize, arrogance. A person is not free if they determine a one-size-fits-all standard. A person is not free if they live on tradition, teaching the same old story in a versatile universe. A person is not free if they believe in superstition, which you are full of. A person is not free when they look for the freedom to do whatever they want. A person is not free when they stand in the way of a free heart's invisible growth. A person is not free if everything they do is to get something in return. A person is not free in a dimension of emotional, sensual, mental, ancestral, religious filth. A person is not free in a political outcome that takes on a subversive role. A person is not free if they talk about freedom, if they deprive their heart of its expression of love. A person is not free if they ignite dispute in the soul. A person is not free in the way they display if they consider themselves wise and they expect to teach others. A person is not free when they meet their own misery and they hide it. A person is not free if they encourage parasitism. A person is not free if they defend their own idea. A person is in no way free when they act according to a fever for success. A person is not free if they intensify the longing to overtake others. A person is not free if they take part to stir up people by inputting rebellion, conflict, wrath, cruelty, and an apparently good principle, respect for the rights. A person is not free when they are prey to fear. A person is not free if they live in the so-called animalistic feeling. A person is not free if they are slave to preconceptions about anything. A person is not free on a social level when they interfere due to ignorance. A person is not free if they come up with exploiting schemes. A person is not free if they ignore a person's soul and spirit. Many other interests, not mentioned here, bring about an individual and social slavery, and as long as they persist, a lasting peace can't be imagined. Peace can't exist without a constant commitment of every individual, and the social aspect is but a reflex of the inner freedom, without which slavery persists. A person, as atheist as they may be, must look for a sincere activity based on a cornerstone inherent in the heart of every human being, whatever the class, the people they belong to. And there's no inequality, but this heart's perceptive sense needs a true, alive, real, inner, consistent freedom, neither in the appearance nor in the sanctimonious believing in rituals, services, celebrations, disciplines, because these will always carry separation, since those who perform them consider themselves better than the others and superior to the others. strengthening expressions linked to a pagan world. On the contrary, a simple spirit consistency in spirit's poverty without any gesture of arrogance, conceit. This is freedom. Interacting in the souls to help them recognize the path to follow, that's your task. Firstly, with your example, an example as a servant to all those who prepare themselves to welcome the good news, human beings' only reality, a good news written in the heart of the human being, since it's there that it was generated and lives, regardless of the human action of the human being. The substance of a wondrous act that can bring all humankind to set off for a profound repentance can't be hidden. Differently, terrible moments await you, always less predictable and even less fixable. You have an example, and it's the unrelenting fruit of every person's behavior. Soon, Encyclopedia will talk about you as a decisive era in the history of humanity, a time potentially capable of choosing its own destiny, capable of accepting a profound change, both inside and outside, capable of fulfilling its own liberation, and at the same time of seeing the enormous abyss in which it may fall with the related consequences. It's up to you. A wish for true light to all of you.